Well, welcome back to this father and son Bible study. Going at this pace and going maybe only 3 or 4 verses at a time has turned out to be a videoing challenge. But every time we get into this, we have a good time and we go deep. And so it's really been worth it. And I recommend it to you. This time we're still in Colossians 3, and last time we did 15 to 17 by memory here. Yes, 15 to 17. And this time we're doing 18 to 21. 18 to 21. So let's just take a read of this. Wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord. And 21, fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. Now, as you know, I'm using the Mounce interlinear to look at the Greek here. And I'm using Young's literal translation. And one kind of funny thing about Young's literal translation is when it said wives, wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. I've got the New King James. We read out of the King James. I just happen to have the New King James here. But in the Young's literal, it's like, the wives, the exclamation point. And then it says, submit to your own husbands. And then it says, the husbands. So very funny. This must be something from the Greek about how, it's sort of normally written out or so. But that was just kind of a funny thing we stumbled across. So I'm going to say 4 things here. I'm going to say something about the wives first. And this is, wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. And so I asked my son, do you know of any young ladies that would say, oh yes, I'm ready to submit myself to my own husband? And he sort of rolled his eyes and said, oh no, yeah. It's a really serious and important point, and absolutely essential for a good marriage. You say, no, I've married my best friend and we're totally equal. And yeah, you're not. You're not totally equal. And men and women are not the same. They have different strengths. And one of the strengths of men is leading. Well, you could say one of the roles of men is to lead. And you say, well, I don't know if they have a strength there. Well, we're not really building it. Men are not taking the lead. Men are not encouraged to take the lead. We get these idiotic commercials on the television that, allude to toxic masculinity. And no, I want my son, well, in the definition of today, to be toxically masculine. I don't want him to be. I don't want to find a way to sort of temper it down. Of course, I don't want him, robbing old ladies on the street with a knife, but that's not masculinity. That's just, that's just unbound aggression and criminality. And so let's not mix those kinds of things up. But, if he, I don't know, if, I've brought him up to say, look, if somebody's going to get in your face and they won't get out of your face, and you give them a warning and, smack them in the head, Also very quick to say, and then don't go off and brag about it like you're Mike Tyson. Do what you need to do as a man to protect yourself, to protect your family, and then let it go. Yeah, don't get sucked into, the fight scene or being violent or being in a gang, this sort of thing. So, and if I'm kind, maybe that's what people mean by toxic masculinity. It isn't, but that would be toxic masculinity. No, but I want him to be very masculine. I want him to be capable of great aggression if needs be for himself or his friends or his family or his children. So here, wives, submit yourself to your husbands. Of course, you say, well, the husband's got to be somebody that you could submit to. You say, oh, yes, you're really great. And that's not the case. It doesn't say, wives, submit yourself to your husbands if he's a leader. It just says to do it because, marriage is a reflection of our relationship with God and the relationship with, Jesus submits himself to the Father. And it doesn't make him any less God. It just shows that there's a hierarchy within the Godhead, and there's a hierarchy within the family. Who makes the decisions? Ladies, submit yourselves to your husbands. He is the leader. Implying, men, you get out there and you lead. Now we're going to get to that. We're going to get to how men should lead. But one more point on this about wives. It doesn't say women. Let me read it. It says, wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. It does not say, women, submit to men. So this is not about inviting you to submit to men. There is nothing here. There is nothing unequal in the way of value between men and women. We do have different roles. Women can't preach. Women can't be the leader of the church. Women are not to be the leader of the home. But they are not just to submit themselves to any old men. That is not what it says here. So wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. And of course, I spent a lot of time there saying, husbands, you've got to be worthy. You should be worthy. But that is not a prerequisite. It just says, wives, do this. And so if you're thinking of getting married to somebody that, submitting to him, I'm not really sure about that, maybe you should think again. The second one here, husbands. It says, husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them. In Ephesians, Ephesians 5 also talks about husbands and wives. And one of the things that jumps out at me is it says, husbands, love your wives, but it says, as Christ loved the church. So it puts the bar like way, way, way up here, higher than most men would have put the love for their wives. So that's a good thing. But it says, wives, respect your husbands. And I think it's really easy I've heard this before, it's not my own thought, but I feel that I've seen this. It's easy for women to love men. It's easy for them to show love to men, even down and dirty, dumb, goofed up men. Women can love them. But respect is something else. And men do want respect from their wives. Not just love, but respect. Now you can say, we have to do something worthy of respect. Okay, but that respect from your wife, it's easy, ladies, I think, for you to love, even the biggest knucklehead out there. Oh, but I love him. But respect is what we're really looking for here. So when wives submit themselves to your husbands, show him that respect. Husbands, love your wives. Don't be bitter toward them. Don't lose your cool. You're supposed to love this woman as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. So husbands and wives, the husband is in charge, but the husbands and wives are respecting and essentially submitting to each other. The man is loving the woman, and the woman is submitting to her husband. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord. Well, I smiled very broadly, doing this with my teenage son. You're supposed to obey. Well, what if Papa said you're supposed to obey? Well, Mom said you're supposed to obey. Get used to obeying. And of course, in these chapters, Paul is also talking about slaves or servants, and we're coming up to that. And in in verse 17 of this chapter, you see, whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord. And so, we're asking wives to submit themselves to their husbands as unto the Lord. Husbands, love your wives as unto the Lord. Children, obey your parents, as unto the Lord, and not just, for, when they're looking, but when they're not looking. There's a submission. There's a level of submission there. So, so the father and the wife submits to the husband, and the children submit to the mother and the father. And then there's a thing here about fathers. Fathers get a special little extra here, and it says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. And I think probably if the mother isn't worried about the scraped knee, or the upset child, or getting the family around the table to have lunch or dinner, and feeding, caring for the family right now, something's a little bit off. And if the father isn't thinking, how's this boy gonna grow up? His father isn't sort of looking out there and saying, he needs some discipline. I need to really, turn the screws a bit on him here, because otherwise he'll just be sort of useless, and maybe not useless for his whole life, but he'll be useless for the next 7 years, and I won't like being around him much. And you want to like being around your kids, and you think, well, I always like being around my kids. Well, then you don't know yourself. And you don't know the first thing about psychology. Absolutely not. Absolutely. You can really find your kids to be disagreeable people to be around, and start to, resent them. Don't do that. And I hear many people, these parents don't know how to discipline their child. Their children won't obey. And in the end, they'll turn out okay. Yes, probably they will, but the next 20 years or so are going to be really tedious. And what's that? What kind of trail of destruction is that going to lead? So there's some really good instruction here for fathers and wives and children. And just to go a little further with this, fathers, don't, what was the word? Provoke your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. While you're thinking of, yes, but I got to turn the screws on this kid and make sure that they're okay, don't turn the screws too hard. It's the old joke about, well, when I was young, I had to bike through, a meter of snow for 3 miles to get to school, and you just have to walk around the block. You got it easier than I had it. And so, you come up with things to, make life a little bit too much like boot camp. The kids, the boys, the girls, they need some encouragement. They need your interaction with them. They need some encouragement. And being tough is part of being a dad. Kids fall over and they smack themselves, and you say, hey, get up. You're all right. If they are indeed all right. That's what you do as a dad. You show them, this is how you're tough. This is how you sort of take life's knocks. Maybe more than mom, who's saying, oh, do you need a Band-Aid? I exaggerate to make the point. But fathers can overcook that. Yeah, I certainly, I see things I don't like. I see things that worry me, and I think, oh, I gotta, crush that out of existence, and that could be too much. You need to back off. You need to make sure that you get the proper level in there. So, wives, gentlemen, find a wife that will submit to you, because she's supposed to. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. The Lord asks it of you. Is it a salvation issue? No, it's not a salvation issue, but the Lord asks it of you. Husbands, love your wives. Yeah. How much? as much as Christ loved the church and gave his life for it. Oh, okay, that much. Right, exactly. Children, obey your parents. Yeah, and they may do knuckleheaded things. You obey them. Yeah, as unto the Lord, what it says in verse 17. And fathers, be careful. Be careful that you're not cracking the whip all too hard. So we're coming to the end here of chapter 3, and it's been really interesting. It's one of my favorite chapters in all of the Bible. Now, next time I'm here, we'll talk about just the last few verses. I think it's 4 or 5 verses just to get to the end of the chapter, and then we'll go rolling into chapter 4, and that'll be the last chapter in Colossians. So until then, God bless.